Hi, I'm Stewart Spinks and welcome to episode 399 of my podcast, Beekeeping Short and Sweet. We're well on our way towards the summer solstice, now that we're in the month of June, and our colonies in all apiaries are building really well. Nucleus colonies have surprised me over at the fishing lakes, but I've also found a number of colonies that appear to be on a brood break. Could this be as a result of the June gap? Beekeeping Short and Sweet, a beekeeping podcast for the inquisitive beekeeper with a short attention span. A beekeeper, in fact, just like me. Hi everyone, I'm back to deliver another weekly dose of our beekeeping exploits and hopefully along the way share some of the techniques I use, offer up some tips to make beekeeping a little more fun and maybe entertain at the same time. First up, the weather report, because my goodness, what a week. A very changeable week of weather we've had here in Norwich. At one point it felt like we may have the central heating kick in at home. It felt really chilly, yet a day or so later it felt really warm again. We've had some tremendous rain showers race through with thunderstorms and high winds, and one particular evening I actually stopped what I was doing at home and went to the window to watch the weather. Does anyone else do that? It just fascinates me to see such extremes of weather because, well, normally we just don't see weather like that. It's looking likely to continue in that showery, changeable manner for the next week or so, although a lot of the time here in Norfolk we don't tend to see a great deal of rainfall compared to the rest of the country. I know I'm tempting fate here, but it's true. We are generally one of the driest parts of the country. Oh, just to paint a picture, it's 4:30 a.m. Friday morning right now as I'm sat here at the dining room table, coffee by my side, putting this week's podcast together because I was awake at 3 a.m. with my head full of beekeeping thoughts. More of those to come, and that's not a call out for sympathy or anything. I am genuinely excited to get out for more beekeeping. I just need more hours in the day, please. So, what have I been up to this past week? Well, apart from dodging the showers, we finally managed to put some clearer boards onto our honey production colonies over at the farm in order to start bringing some of the spring honey crop home for processing. This year, for the first time in a long time, I'm having to complete this process in stages. I simply don't have the space here at home to store all of the supers that need extracting, something of a change from the recent previous years when we were able to use all of the space at the unit that I rented just up the road. I don't have any regrets about giving up the unit and moving everything back home, but space is definitely at a premium and I'm having to work out the best strategy for dealing with all of the processes through a busy beekeeping year. Thankfully, I still have the workshop to use for all of the messy jobs. The method I use for clearing supers is simple enough. For those of you listening to this as new beekeepers, what we mean by clearing supers is to remove all of the bees from the supers in question so that it can be removed from the hive and taken home for the honey to be extracted without also bringing along hundreds of honeybees with them. There are, of course, many ways of clearing supers. Over the years, I've tried several, and the best, most practical and kind to the bees way that I've found is using clearer boards. We have, when we were on the borage a few years ago, tried using a blower to clear supers, and that was just too harsh, I felt. And of course, if you have a grumpy hive, they become even more unfriendly. Not a pleasant task with those kinds of bees, trust me. All of the different types of clearer board work really well. I have a number of rhombus boards. I've used half rhombus clearer boards. These use a rhombus clearer cut in half and each section fitted to a diagonally opposite corner in the clearer board. I've used porta bee escapes in crown boards, which worked really well too. I haven't used a Canadian clearer board. Those are the ones with the plastic cones in each corner. I've not used them because the types that I have used have worked perfectly well. The most important thing to remember when attempting to clear supers using a clearer board of whatever type that you choose is that the colony needs to be queen right. The workers need to have a reason to move back down into the boxes below the clearer board. Just to reiterate for any beginner beekeepers listening in, the clearer board goes between the full supers that you want to take home to extract and the remaining part of the hive below. With a queen right colony, the bees in the supers work their way back down into the main body of the hive where the queen's pheromone is strongest, thus emptying the supers of pretty much all the bees. Without this pheromone, the bees simply sit around in the supers and have to be shaken, brushed or blown off. I like to use a combination of all three if I find this situation. A quick shake followed by a handful of grass to brush the bees off frames, and a final blow to remove bees from the inner walls of the supers themselves. I do sometimes just use the grass to brush them off as well, all in an attempt to minimise the number of bees that I bring back home. I am finding myself very short on space in my 3 metre by 3 metre honey room at the moment, especially with so many brood boxes coming back to go into the apimelter to remove the honey. This is the large heated tank that we use to get granulated honey out of frames, among other tasks, and it works really well. The brood boxes this year have been problematic, with unevenly drawn comb. My normal course of action with these spring brood boxes is to use the drawn frames for replacement or for splits, but this year I've had to adapt my plans and I decided they were not good enough to reuse, and so I took the decision to start over again with them. The squeeze in the honey room is caused by the increased demand in honey from our stockists. I had intended to remove the settling tank, hydraulic lift table and bottling machine prior to beginning the extraction process, but we need to get a large batch of honey processed and into jars for a couple of large orders, so right now it's a squeeze. Has anyone come up against a June gap or even a May gap this year? We haven't, but several colonies seem to think that there is one. The upshot of this is what appears to be a brood break in a number of colonies where I'm finding no eggs or young larvae, almost to the point of thinking that they must have swarmed, and yet there are no queen cells, and in a couple we've seen a marked queen. So a brood break is, well, exactly as it sounds. In a normally functioning colony with a well-mated laying queen, you would expect to find eggs, brood in all stages, and lots of sealed brood. Again, sealed brood at all stages of development, from just capped to emerging adult bees. With a brood break, you might only find old open brood and sealed brood. No eggs or younger larvae. It's generally not an issue, just the colony putting the brakes on brood development because of a sudden stop in resources maybe. It could be the full spring nectar flow has suddenly come to an end, or maybe you've treated the bees with a varroa treatment. Don't rush out and buy a new queen thinking the old one must have gone missing for whatever reason. Be patient and give them some time. Have a close listen to the colony. Are they fanning vigorously because they are queenless, or does it sound quite normal? The chances are, within a week or so, the queen will resume laying once more and everything will settle down. We don't appear to have had a gap in forage for the bees, particularly at the fishing lakes, as the blackberry nectar is now coming into the hives. Time to add supers for some of these colonies before we miss the boat. Talking of patience with brood break colonies, another area I've had to be patient with is early spring splits created from nukes that were on the point of swarming way back in late April and early May. Over at the allotment apiary at that time, I found Nucleus colonies bursting with bees and brood, mostly on the point of swarming if they hadn't already gone. It was a torrid time for swarming nukes for us. I made a lot of splits to reduce the number of bees in boxes and remove frames of brood, simply to hold these growing colonies back and give myself time. I took a large number of these splits over to the Fishing Lakes apiary and have, regularly, checked in on them, searching for emerged queens and mated queens, eggs and larvae, as we tend to. Sometimes I get a little impatient to see a successfully mated queen and newly created nucleus colonies in their own right. Well, for some of these colonies it's been 6 weeks, but finally, yesterday, I dodged the showers and inspected these nukes, and all but 3 had successfully requeened and were actually bursting with bees and brood. That's 3 out of around 20 splits, and I'm happy with that return given the very variable weather we've had over the last month or so. It just goes to show that we all need to be patient when it comes to our bees, be that requeening, honey production, or even a simple process of getting a colony to draw out new brood frames. Sometimes it just takes a little longer than we expect. Elsewhere, I've been reorganising colonies and moving them to their summer locations for the main nectar flow of the year. Now, I know you all like to hear of my mishaps, and, well, whilst this isn't really a mishap, it is a situation that could have worked out better than it did, although I don't think there has been any permanent damage. Let me explain. So, moving bees during the daytime, it's important to keep them from overheating. The strength of the sun can easily cause colonies to overheat rapidly and have a meltdown. The colony gets so hot, the wax comb literally melts down out of the frames. If I'm moving bees any distance, I'll complete the job overnight. I don't like risking the bees with hot direct sunlight. Locally, that's less than an hour of drive time. I'm fairly relaxed about it. Just to say, I would only ever move thoroughly inspected and confirmed healthy bees. Please don't create a problem for yourselves and your apiary by moving diseased colonies in or out. Be sure you understand what disease looks like and that your bees are clear of it. So, over at the farm apiary, we had our primary honey production colonies. These were here to take advantage of the early season forage, including oilseed rape, all of which is now finished. Time to move them to their summer forage locations. Although it's been showery, the sun is powerful right now, so I opted to use travel screens. These are basically a wooden frame holding a mesh screen that goes on top of the uppermost box, be it a super or brood box, and it's then strapped in place. At the point of moving, the roof and crown board are removed, allowing air to flow into the hive and for the bees to be better able to keep the colony as cool as they need it. Given the very local move I had planned, there wasn't a need to move large numbers of hives at once, and so I opted on this occasion to move just 6 colonies during the day. Travel screens firmly in place, sun blazing down, the truck was loaded and we set off, Steph, Marley and me. We managed to get off the farm and onto the main A11 road heading towards Norwich and into the queues of traffic currently being caused by major roadworks on the outskirts of Norwich. It was at this point the skies darkened, and I mean really darkened. Thunder rumbled and the clouds simply burst directly overhead. It absolutely poured down, windscreen wipers at maximum, lights on, and beehives in the back of the truck getting totally soaked. I guess luckily we had double stacked them, so the colonies on the bottom were being kept reasonably dry by the poor old colony on top. The rain didn't last for long, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but my goodness, it certainly gave everything a good soaking. Over at the fishing lakes, you would have thought we had taken a hose to the truck. Here, the ground was bone dry, having had no rain at all. Once in the apiary, the colonies were unloaded, somewhat damp for their journey, and settled onto hive stands. It was at this point we realised, or rather Steph realised, we had moved a particularly nasty colony. Several stings later, and some very colourful language, we had the hive entrances unblocked and the bees were flying once again. I do need to get supers onto these colonies as soon as possible, because the nectar is definitely coming in from the brambles right now. I don't think any of the colonies suffered unduly because of that rain, and we couldn't find anywhere to stop to pop roofs back on, so I think we probably got lucky. The next inspection will tell if that's the case. The nasty colony is in urgent need of requeening. I really don't want this colony to remain as they are. It's just too uncomfortable to work with them. Most likely, I will split them into nukes, split them hard, probably into 2 frame nukes, and add queen cells from our queen rearing project. Oh, and for those of you who have listened over the months and years recently, it's going to be the cloak board, not the John Harding method. I'm simply not organised enough this year. Well, that's it for this week. For all of you who haven't yet signed up to my Patreon page, I, together with Steph, have been creating beekeeping content for many years now. And if you're looking for some straightforward, down-to-earth tips and techniques, help and advice, then do take a look at my Patreon page. We have over 1,700 individual beekeeping posts, videos and podcasts filled with useful and timely help and advice. My approach is pragmatic and calm, sometimes entertaining, but always with help and support for the beekeepers at the heart of what I do. I keep my videos short and concise wherever possible, no waffle, no flannel, just honest beekeeping advice from years of keeping bees. Take a look and join me for the new 2026 beekeeping season. It'll cost you less than a jar of honey, and you never know, there may be something there that will help improve your beekeeping. Check us out online at www.patreon.com/Norfolk Honey.